The day Karen cut down my fence, I knew life in this neighborhood was never going to be normal. I had just finished settling into my new place, a modest house on the edge of town where the land stretched wide and quiet. For me, that fence wasn't just wood and nails, it was peace of mind. It kept my dog safe, marked my space, and gave me the sense of privacy I'd been craving for years. But Karen saw it differently. She stormed into my yard like she owned the place, demanding I remove it because it blocked her access. Access to what exactly? A scraggly strip of weeds, a drainage ditch, and nothing more. I laughed, thinking it was a misunderstanding. I figured she'd calm down once she realized the fence wasn't even touching her property. I was wrong. The next day, I came home from work to find my fence hacked apart. Posts ripped out of the ground, planks scattered like bones in the dirt, and my dog barking frantically at the mess. Someone had taken a saw to it, and I didn't need a detective to know who. When I confronted her, Karen stood in her driveway, arms crossed, a smug grin plastered on her face. "You built it in the wrong place," she said. "I need this open. Nothing you can do about it, but there was something I could do. Because life has a funny way of serving justice to people who think they're untouchable. Just 2 months later, the county put a handful of tax-delinquent parcels up for auction. And guess what showed up on the list? That very same strip of land Karen had fought over. The one she'd torn my fence down to claim. I didn't hesitate. I bought it outright. And when I walked over to her porch with the deed in my hand, the look on her face was worth every penny. She thought she'd taken control by cutting down my fence. But she didn't just hand me a fight. She handed me the ground beneath her own feet. Before we go on, hit subscribe, so stories like this reach you first. When I first moved into the house, I thought I had struck gold. The place was quiet, surrounded by tall trees, and the nearest grocery store was 10 minutes away. I wanted space, privacy, and maybe a little breathing room after years of city living. The fence I built wasn't anything fancy. It was simple wood, sturdy enough to keep my dog from wandering, tall enough to give me privacy, and positioned neatly within the survey boundaries. But peace never lasts long when you have a neighbor like Karen. From the start, she carried herself like she owned not just her yard, but half the neighborhood too. She was loud, nosy, and always had some complaint ready on her lips. One week it was the color of another neighbor's shutters. The next it was a rant about trash cans being too close to the curb. Everyone on the block knew her, but no one seemed to like her. So when she came marching into my yard, finger pointing at my fence, I should have seen the storm coming. She didn't ask politely, didn't even suggest it might be misplaced. She demanded I take it down, claiming the strip of land behind it was her access route. To what? I still didn't know, because behind that strip was nothing but weeds. Rocks and a drainage ditch the county barely maintained. At first I humored her. I pulled out the survey map, showed her the clear lines, and explained that my fence sat well within my property. She rolled her eyes, waved her hand, and muttered something about taking matters into her own hands. I thought she was bluffing. Then came the morning I found my fence torn apart, posts hacked, boards stacked like kindling, and my dog pacing nervously along the property line as if guarding against an intruder. Karen hadn't just made a statement. She'd made it clear she wasn't afraid to break the law to get her way. Neighbors whispered about it, too. One man across the street shook his head and said quietly, "She did the same thing to the last guy who lived here. Drove him right out." Another told me Karen had a history of pushing boundaries, but most people just ignored her to avoid the drama. That wasn't my style. I documented everything. Photos of the destroyed fence, written notes of our confrontations, even the dates she trespassed onto my yard. What she thought was an act of dominance was, in reality, evidence piling up against her. I wasn't just planning to rebuild the fence. I was preparing for the day I could turn her arrogance into her downfall. And that day came sooner than I expected. When a small notice from the county landed in my mailbox about an upcoming property auction. Listed in plain text was a parcel of land that sounded oddly familiar, a thin strip running right between our properties. The same strip Karen had thrown a tantrum over. She thought she'd destroyed my fence to win. She didn't realize she'd opened the door to me owning the very ground she was fighting for. Karen didn't stop with tearing down my fence. She strutted around like she'd won, bragging to neighbors that she'd put me in my place. She even started using the strip like it was her driveway, dragging her trash bins across it and parking her lawn equipment there just to rub it in. But the more she gloated, the more determined I became. I kept collecting evidence, filing every photo and notice away, waiting for my chance. And when that county auction notice showed up in my mailbox, listing the very strip of land she thought she owned, I knew the game had shifted. Karen believed she had the upper hand, but I was about to buy the ground right out from under her feet. The county auction was quiet, held in a cramped room at the courthouse with a handful of bidders. Most people were there for hunting land or empty lots. When the clerk read out the description of the narrow strip between my house and Karen's, nobody even blinked, except me. I raised my hand, placed my bid, and within minutes the gavel came down. Sold. Just like that, the disputed strip was mine. I walked out with a signed deed in my pocket and a grin I couldn't hide. The next morning, I strolled over to Karen's yard. She was hauling trash cans across the strip, her usual smug expression plastered on her face. "Morning, Karen," I said, holding up the deed. "You're standing on my property." The smile drained from her face. She sputtered, "That's not possible. This land is mine." I handed her a copy of the deed. "Not anymore. You cut down my fence for access. Well, congratulations. Now every step you take here is trespassing. And unlike you, I have the paperwork to prove it." Her jaw dropped. For the first time since she moved in, Karen had nothing to say. Owning that strip of land changed everything. Overnight, the dynamic between me and Karen flipped. She could no longer strut across my yard or tear down my fence with impunity. Every time she dragged her trash bins or mower across the strip, I reminded her, politely but firmly, that she was trespassing. The threat of legal consequences silenced her faster than any argument ever could. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. People who had once avoided Karen, afraid of her temper, began to smile when they saw me. "About time someone stood up to her," one neighbor whispered with a grin. Another admitted they'd been quietly cheering me on ever since she cut down my fence. Karen had made plenty of enemies, but no one had ever had the leverage to push back. Now, thanks to the auction, I did. The best part? I didn't use the land to be petty. I rebuilt my fence stronger than before and put up clear boundary markers. But I also made it known. Neighbors were welcome to cut through if they asked first. It wasn't about keeping people out. It was about making sure Karen couldn't bully her way in. And oh, how she hated it. For weeks, she tried little tricks, complaining to the county, calling code enforcement, even scribbling anonymous notes about property misuse. Each time, the paperwork shut her down. The deed was ironclad, and no amount of whining could change it. Eventually, she stopped trying. Her swagger dulled, her complaints grew quieter, and she spent more time sulking behind closed curtains than storming across lawns. The neighborhood felt lighter without her constant chaos. For the first time since moving in, I had the peace I wanted all along. One evening, as I sat on my porch with my dog at my feet, I realized something. Karen thought cutting down my fence was her victory. But by doing it, she led me straight to the auction, straight to the opportunity to take control of the very land she coveted. She tried to destroy my boundary. Instead, she handed me the power to build one she could never cross again. Turns out the sweetest revenge isn't confrontation, it's ownership. And nothing silences a bully faster than a deed with your name on it.